Imagine the following. You are in a race, but instead of speeding up, you decide to walk. Others run beside you, yet you convince yourself that walking is the right choice. After all, who said running is necessary? This is the trap of weakness. Nietzsche saw weakness not merely as a limitation, but as a defense mechanism. When someone feels powerless to compete, they might choose an easier path, creating justifications for their stagnation. And these justifications often take the form of fabricated moralities. Think about how many times you've heard phrases like, "Money doesn't bring happiness." The important thing is to have good health. Being ambitious is wrong. Did these beliefs arise from deep analysis, or were they simply a way to justify powerlessness? Nietzsche believed that weakness refuses to be seen as weakness. So, instead of admitting its limitations, it creates values that turn them into virtues. And the worst part? When many people do this, this mindset becomes the norm. The world begins to see strength and autonomy as something wrong, while passivity and submission become good qualities. This is where the trap closes. If weakness is a trap, how do you escape it? Simple. Stop validating powerlessness with acceptable excuses. When you notice yourself justifying something that limits you, ask yourself, does this belief truly make sense, or is it just a way to comfort myself? Strength is not about being perfect, but about recognizing where you can improve without relying on moral crutches. Now, what happens when this mentality of weakness spreads throughout society? Nietzsche believed it led to the greatest inversion of values in history. Imagine living in a society where mediocrity is celebrated and excellence is punished, where being strong, ambitious, and independent makes you a bad person, while being fragile, submissive, and complacent is seen as a virtue. Sounds like a nightmare, right? But according to Nietzsche, this is precisely the inversion of values that took place throughout history. And the worst part? Most people don't even realize they've fallen into this manipulation. For Nietzsche, weakness doesn't just protect itself with excuses. It creates an entire system to justify its existence. He called this the slave morality, a set of values created by those who couldn't win in the game of life. Instead of striving for strength and autonomy, the weak began to demonize these qualities. They turned their powerlessness into something noble. And what was their solution? To create a morality where the powerful were seen as cruel and the weak as virtuous. The result? A world where humility, resignation, and submission became exalted qualities, while strength, ambition, and individuality came to be condemned. But here comes the most dangerous part. This morality didn't just make people weaker, it gave rise to something even worse, resentment. And this is where things get truly dark. Because when resentful people can't elevate themselves, they do everything in their power to bring others down. Imagine dedicating yourself, working hard, overcoming challenges, and achieving something great. But instead of recognition, what do you receive? Sideways glances, sarcastic comments, people downplaying your achievements and calling you lucky or privileged. Has this ever happened to you? If so, you've witnessed resentment in action. Nietzsche saw resentment as the fuel of the weak. But not just any resentment, a dishonest resentment, one that refuses to acknowledge its own weakness and instead seeks to bring down those who stand out. Think about it. If someone can't rise to greatness, what do? They can either strive to improve, or they can turn their weakness into a virtue. This is how moral inversion is born. Instead of admitting their limitations and pursuing growth, the resentful create a narrative where the strong are seen as oppressors, and their own failures as signs of goodness or purity. This mechanism is insidious because it disguises itself as humility, justice, and equality. But in truth, it conceals something far more toxic, the refusal to take responsibility for one's own life. And when this mindset spreads, it doesn't just destroy individuals, it corrodes entire societies, because resentment never stays confined to those who feel it. It spreads, infects, and transforms into something even more dangerous, a culture of dependency, self-pity, and self-deception. Imagine a castle being silently corroded, not by an external attack, but by something far more insidious, the rot growing within its own walls. This castle represents your mind, your relationships, and even the society you live in. Nietzsche saw weakness exactly like this, not just a personal problem, but a virus that spreads and destroys everything around it. The worst thing about this virus? It convinces the very person infected that it doesn't exist. Weakness doesn't just stop us from growing, it teaches us to run from reality. We create excuses, shift blame onto others, and settle into a state of stagnation where the discomfort of growth seems worse than the suffering of staying in the same place. But there's something even more destructive. When weakness spreads, it erodes trust between people. Relationships built on self-pity and emotional dependence turn toxic. The fear of facing the truth prevents people from being honest with one another. Trust disappears. And the result? A society that rejects truth, glorifies mediocrity, and punishes those who dare to be great. Does this mean there's no way out? Not at all. There is an antidote to this virus, but it's not what you might expect. It's not about brutality, arrogance, or imposing strength on others. True strength is something far more difficult, the courage to face reality head-on, without masks. Close your eyes for a second and imagine this. You're standing in front of a mirror. But it's not an ordinary mirror. It doesn't reflect your appearance. It reflects your truth. No filters, no excuses, no masks. Do you face it, or do you look away? For Nietzsche, true strength isn't about dominating others. It's about confronting your own reality head-on. And that takes courage. Many people mistake strength for aggression, arrogance, or domination. But Nietzsche saw strength differently. Being strong isn't about being insensitive. It's not about crushing others to feel superior. Real strength lies in being brutally honest with yourself, in recognizing your own flaws without making excuses, in taking action despite fear. Because weakness hides behind justifications. Strength, on the other hand, takes risks, faces challenges, and creates new values. And here's the most important point. Those who lack the courage to live authentically end up living by someone else's rules. Look around you. How many people do you know who are trapped by external expectations? Who choose careers, relationships, and habits based on what others will think? That's not living. That's surviving on autopilot. True strength emerges when you stop trying to fit in and start paving your own path. When you accept that being authentic might make others uncomfortable, but it's worth the price. Because in the end, no one respects those who lack the courage to be who they truly are. But there's a problem. There's something that can sabotage your strength before you even begin to exercise it. Something that often appears to be a virtue, but can actually be keeping you trapped. You know that idea that we should always be understanding and ease the suffering of others. Sounds noble, doesn't it? But what if I told you that more often than not, this actually perpetuates weakness instead of strengthening it? Imagine someone you love facing difficulties. Your first instinct is to help, ease the pain, solve the problem for them. But what if, without realizing it, you were doing exactly the opposite? Nietzsche believed that excessive compassion can turn into a burden, both for the receiver and the giver. He saw this pity as a trap that can keep people in weakness, preventing them from growing. How many times have you seen someone who always depends on others to solve their problems? People who, instead of finding solutions, lean on the comfort of others' compassion. This creates a dangerous cycle. The more we help without requiring effort, the more dependent these people become. Misguided compassion infantilizes, removes responsibility, and prevents someone from developing their own strength. Of course, helping those in need is essential. But Nietzsche warns us, there's a fine line between supporting and hindering someone's growth. True strength isn't about feeling pity, it's about encouraging overcoming. The compassion that truly makes a difference isn't the one that relieves momentary pain, but the one that teaches the person to face it. Imagine a coach who sees an athlete complaining that an exercise is hard. He could say, "It's okay, stop for today." But what does he do? He tells them to keep going, to endure, to strengthen themselves. That's true compassion, helping someone find strength within themselves. And now comes the most important question: how to turn difficulties into growth. If excessive pity can weaken us, how should we face life's challenges? Nietzsche had a powerful answer to that. He believed that true strength comes from self-affirmation and accepting life as it is, with all its challenges. And here's a detail that almost no one realizes. Truly accepting life isn't about settling, but about using it as fuel to become stronger. Imagine you're in the middle of a storm. The wind is strong. The rain falls incessantly. You could easily shrink away and wait for the storm to pass. But what if you face the storm with courage, accepting it and using this adversity to grow? Nietzsche believed that true strength comes from self-affirmation and acceptance of life as it is, with all the challenges it brings. We are not here simply to avoid difficulties, but to embrace them as an opportunity for evolution. We live in a world where victimization is on the rise. It's easy to blame circumstances, the system, others, and hide behind those excuses. But Nietzsche challenges us. Does this really make us stronger? When we get stuck in the role of victims, we lose control over our own lives. Instead of seeing obstacles as opportunities for transformation, victimization prevents us from acting, learning, and growing. Now, if you're still with me, you've probably already understood that true strength doesn't lie in lamenting, but in accepting and transforming adversity. Here's the big secret. When we accept life's challenges with love and courage, we find a deep strength within ourselves. Instead of complaining about difficulties, ask yourself how you can use them to your advantage. Every difficulty is a chance to become stronger, wiser, more resilient. What is painful today may be the foundation of your greatness tomorrow. For example, think about moments in your life when you overcame something tough. It wasn't in moments of ease that you strengthened yourself, but in those days of struggle. Self-affirmation comes from looking at those moments and saying, I am capable, I am stronger than this. For Nietzsche, the strong do not passively react to circumstances. They are not victims of what happens. On the contrary, they create something new from it. They rewrite their own stories and the stories around them. This is true strength. It's not about being invincible, but about changing one's own values in the face of adversity. Now think of figures like Leonardo da Vinci or Mahatma Gandhi. These people didn't just react to the world around them. They transformed difficulties into opportunities to create something that had never existed before. Da Vinci, for example, didn't get stuck in his time and the limitations of his society. He used difficulties as fuel for his innovation. Gandhi, in turn, didn't become a prisoner of oppression, but used adversity to create a peaceful revolution. Does this sound utopian? It's not. True strength lies in action, not reaction. When you face difficulty, ask yourself, how can this be an opportunity? How can I use this to create something new in my life? By doing this, you don't just change your perspective, you start changing the very dynamics of your world. A simple example. Imagine you lose a job. Your first reaction might be frustration, fear, or despair. But true strength is saying, this is an opportunity for me to create a new path. I can use this to reinvent myself. You might wonder, okay, now I understand how to use adversity in my life, but how does this apply to the world around me? How does it affect society? Well, that leads us to the next crucial step. When we begin to create, not just react, we begin to build a stronger, more resilient, and truer society. Let me show you how a truly strong society does not rely on conformity or victimhood. On the contrary, it encourages individuality, critical thinking, and the pursuit of excellence. This is the kind of society we need, and I'll tell you why this is essential for our future. Imagine a society where everyone follows the same path, where people mold themselves to fit in and conform, leaving no space for individuality. Now imagine the opposite, a society where true strength comes from authenticity, the courage to be who you are, and resilience in the face of challenges. Which of these societies seems more capable of generating innovation, strength, and true growth? A truly strong society is not one that simply follows rigid rules or demands everyone fit into the same mold. On the contrary, it values individuality and celebrates differences. A strong society is not one that says, be like everyone, but rather be who you are, be your best version. Instead of promoting victimhood or conformity, it encourages critical thinking, resilience, and the pursuit of excellence. It is a society where each person has the opportunity to express their fullest potential. The society you live in shapes how you see the world and yourself. If we grow up in an environment that values conformity and victimhood, it can limit us. But when we are encouraged to think for ourselves, to question, and to seek solutions instead of waiting for ready-made answers, our inner strength flourishes. When we are not pressured to fit into a pattern, we have the freedom to create and transform the world around us. Have you noticed how the most successful people are those who think independently, who do not follow the imposed rules but create their own? Imagine you want to launch a new project or a new path in your life. If you're surrounded by a society that limits your authenticity, it might be harder to make the decision to move forward. However, if you live in an environment that encourages excellence and authenticity, the possibilities are endless. Critical thinking becomes a powerful tool to question what doesn't work and create something that truly makes a difference. An example of this is Steve Jobs himself, who didn't follow the traditional path of studies or work. He was a creator who didn't conform to the normal. He built a company that revolutionized technology because he believed in his unique vision, even when everyone around him doubted him. His journey wasn't about following rules, but about creating new possibilities. He is a clear example of how a society that values individuality and creation can generate changes that impact the entire world. You can be the change you want to see in the world, but for that, you need to start valuing your individuality, your authenticity, and your resilience. Instead of conforming to standards, challenge yourself to be unique. Strive for excellence in everything you do, without being trapped by the expectations of others. Ask yourself, what can you create that no one else can? What can you turn into an opportunity? How can you bring innovation and authenticity into your life and the world around you? The choice is yours. So, what will you choose? Want more content to help you get better? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. See you in the next video.